Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, there's a version of history that feels, well, it feels safe, almost comfortable. It's the one most of us learned. The Allies win World War II, the Nazis are defeated, the worst of them are put on trial at Nuremberg, justice is served. It's all very black and white.
Very clean. And as it turns out, completely misleading.
Right. Because today we are looking at a book that just takes that whole narrative and throws it into a shredder.
Yeah.
We're doing a deep dive into Blowback, America's recruitment of Nazis, and its destructive impact on our domestic and foreign policy by Christopher Simpson.
Yeah.
And the main point here isn't just that the U.S. government hired a few ex-Nazis for rocket science.
No.
It's that the recruitment was massive, it was systemic, and it actually shaped the Cold War in ways we are still dealing with today.
It is a deeply disturbing read. Simpson really gets into the archives to show that while American prosecutors were publicly hunting down war criminals for Nuremberg—
To hang them.
To hang them, yes. Yeah. American intelligence agencies, sometimes in the office right next door, were secretly hiring those same people.
And that's really the mission for this deep dive. We want to get past that general idea of, oh, we got some scientists, paperclip rockets. We want to look at the mechanics, the actual bureaucracy of the cover-up, and the cost. Because Simpson argues there was a huge price tag.
Exactly. He calls it blowback. And that's an actual term from the intelligence world. Yeah. It's the unintended consequences of a secret op that, comes back to bite you. The argument here is that by relying on Nazis for intelligence, we didn't just compromise our morals. We compromised our actual national security.
We made ourselves less safe.
By trying to be too clever, yeah.
So let's start with the scale of this. For decades, the official line was something like, okay, maybe a few slipped through the cracks, the whole needle in a haystack defense.
The rare exception defense, right. Simpson spends a lot of time on the 1983 Justice Department report about Klaus Barbie.
The Butcher of Lions.
The Butcher of Lions. And we should be clear, this is not a scientist. This is a Gestapo chief who specialized in torture.
A truly awful figure.
Horrific. And when the government finally admitted in the 80s that, yes, U.S. intelligence had recruited him and helped him escape, they framed it as a mistake. They said, we didn't know, and that he was the only one.
Which, based on Simpson's evidence, is just not true.
It's a total fabrication. I mean, Blowback just lists case after case proving Barbie was the rule, not the exception. Take Otto von Bolschwing.
Okay.
This was not some low-level guy. He was a senior aide to Adolf Eichmann.
Eichmann, the architect of the Holocaust, the man who organized the logistics of mass murder.
That's the one. And von Bolschwing wasn't just pushing paper. He actively instigated pogroms in Bucharest. I mean, civilians were butchered in the most horrific ways.
Wow.
There are reports of people hung on meat hooks in slaughterhouses. This is on his record. Yet in 1945, he just volunteers for the U.S. Army Counterintelligence Corps. And they don't arrest him.
They hire him.
They hire him. To do what? To recruit other former Nazis. They used him as a talent scout. Later, the CIA took him on and brought him to the United States. He lived here, paid by the government as a reward for his service.
It really stops being an oversight when you bring them home to live next door. There's another name in the book that just floored me. Robert Verbeelen.
Verbeelen is a perfect example of how low the bar was. He was a Belgian SS officer. He'd been sentenced to death in absentia for war crimes, and not just, generic charges.
It was specific.
Very specific. For the torture of U.S. Air Force pilots.
Wait, hold on. He tortured Americans.
Yes.
And we hired him.
Hired him as a contract spy. The logic was just pure anti-communist utility. If they could help fight the Soviets, their past, even if it involved torturing our own soldiers, was seen as irrelevant. It's a level of pragmatism that's just, it's insane.
That's a hard pill to swallow. It feels like the anti-communist panic just overrode everything immediately.
It did. And then there's Dr. Kurt Blome. This is where you get into the medical horrors. Blum led Nazi biological warfare research. He admitted testing plague vaccines on prisoners in concentration camps.
And, let me guess, the U.S. Army Chemical Corps hired him.
You got it. To start a new round of biological weapons research for us. So this exception myth, it just holds no water. This was a program.
A systemic program where the main job requirements seem to be war criminal with transferable skills.
Pretty much.
Okay, let's pivot to the group that sort of provides the cover for all this, the scientists. Operation Paperclip. This is where people usually say, well, we needed the rockets before the Russians got them.
The necessary evil argument?
Right.
This is supposed to be the good part of the story. You think of Wernher von Braun, the moon landing, the space race.
American flags on the moon.
Exactly. It's framed as a great American triumph. But Simpson argues you have to strip away that glamour and look at where the tech actually came from.
Which brings us to Nordhausen.
The Middlework factory at Nordhausen. It was an underground rocket factory built into a mountain, and it was staffed by slave labor from the Dora concentration camp. The conditions were just apocalyptic. Simpson cites figures of around 20,000 prisoners who died there.
The number is just staggering. 20,000 dead to build the V2s. That's more people than the V2s actually killed in London.
Exactly. More people died building the weapon than were killed by it. Starvation, disease, summary executions. The book describes this U.S. Signal Corps film from when they liberated the camp, and it showed bodies with, quote, no flesh left, only skin.
And the leaders of this program, like General Walter Dornberger and von Braun, they weren't somewhere else. They were there.
They were the managers. Dornberger specifically. He was pushing for faster production even as the food was running out. He knew the cost. He saw the bodies every day. And yet, when the war ends, the U.S. military looks at him and sees an asset, not a criminal.
But this is the part I want to understand. The how. President Truman had an explicit order, right? No active supporters of Nazism.
Yeah.
So how do you get a guy like von Braun, an SS major, past the president of the United States?
You cheat. Simpson uncovers this amazing bureaucratic battle between two men, Bosket Webb and Samuel Klaus.
Okay, who were they?
So Webb is the director of the JIOA, the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency. He's the military guy. He wants the scientists. Samuel Klaus is with the State Department, and he's the one trying to follow the law.
He's the stickler.
He is. He looks at these files and says, we can't let these men in. They are ardent Nazis. It violates the president's order.
Which it absolutely did.
Right. But Webb just argues national security trumps it all. He says if we don't take them, the Russians will. So when Klaus won't budge, Webb pulls a move that is just breathtakingly cynical. He pulls the dossiers.
The actual personnel file.
Yes. He sends them back to the military government in Germany with what was basically a sticky note saying, fix this. And they did. They literally rewrote the files.
So a file that originally said ardent Nazi, member of the SS, comes back saying what?
Not a security threat. They whitewashed the SS memberships, they buried the details about the slave labor, they sanitized everything. And once those files were clean, they sent them back. The State Department, now looking at clean files, had to approve the visas.
That sets a dangerous precedent, doesn't it, if you can whitewash a high-profile guy like that?
You can whitewash anyone. And that door opening allows for something much, much darker than scientists. It leads us to the Gehlen organization.
This feels like the heart of Simpson's argument about the intelligence failure. We've gone from we need their rockets to we need their spies. So who was Reinhard Gehlen?
Gehlen was Hitler's intelligence chief for the Eastern Front. He was the guy supposed to know everything about the Red Army. As the war was ending, he realized, okay, Germany's going to lose, and the next big conflict is going to be between the Americans and the Soviets.
He saw the Cold War coming before the Hot War was even over.
And he knew his knowledge was his get-out-of-jail-free card. So he takes his massive archives, microfilms of files on the USSR, all his records, and he buries them in steel drums in the Austrian Alps. He literally buried an intelligence treasure trove.
And then just waited for the Americans to find him.
He surrenders to a Captain John Beaucourt and basically makes a deal. I have the files, I have the spy network, you protect me, and I give you the keys to the Soviet Union.
And he had conditions.
He promised he wouldn't hire SS or Gestapo men. He claimed he was a professional soldier, an aristocrat, not one of those dirty ideologues.
And I'm guessing the Americans believed him.
They wanted to. They were desperate for intel on Russia. They had almost no human intelligence on the ground there. But Gehlen broke that promise almost immediately. His organization, which became the CIA's main source for Eastern Europe, was just stuffed with the worst of the worst.
Give us an example. Who did he hire?
Well, there's Franz Six. He was an SS brigadier general. During the war, he led an Einsatzgruppen unit.
The mobile killing squads.
The mobile killing squads? Yeah. His unit murdered civilians in Smolensk. This isn't, I fought on the front lines. This is direct participation in genocide.
It's mass murder.
And here's the kicker. Six was actually convicted of war crimes at Nuremberg. He was in prison. But Gehlen said he was indispensable, so Six was granted clemency and went straight to work for the organization.
A convicted war criminal on the payroll.
Correct. Or you have Emil Augsburg. He was from the Wannsee Institute.
Wannsee, where the final solution was planned.
The very same. Augsburg was an expert in what they called special tasks, which was the Nazi euphemism for mass murder. Gehlen used him to create legends cover stories for spies. He used the mind of a genocide planner to craft spy identities.
So this gets to the core problem. We made this deal with the devil. We compromised everything. Did we at least get good intelligence out of it?
And that is the tragic irony. No, this is where the blowback really hits hard. Simpson argues the intelligence was deeply, deeply flawed. I mean, you have to consider the source. A lot of Galen's data came from the torture and starvation of 4 million Soviet POWs.
And information you get from torture is famously unreliable.
Exactly. People will say whatever they think you want to hear to make the pain stop. And this leads to the huge strategic failure. Because Galen had a problem. He's a Nazi general working for the Americans. He has to prove he's essential to keep the money flowing and to keep himself out of a jail cell.
He had a massive incentive to exaggerate the threat.
A massive incentive to terrify his new bosses, which he did. This all came to a head in the 1948 war scare. Galen reports to the Americans that there are 175 combat-ready Soviet divisions about to attack the West.
A huge, high-tech Red Army.
A blitzkrieg waiting to happen. That was the picture he painted.
The reality was
not even close. Simpson shows the Red Army was largely demobilized, exhausted. They were still using horse-drawn transport for a lot of their logistics.
Horse-drawn?
Yes. While Galen is reporting this modern army, the Soviets are actually ripping up German train tracks to ship back to Russia for scrap metal. They weren't preparing an invasion, they were trying to rebuild a ruined country.
But the Americans bought it.
Hook, line, and sinker. General Lucius Clay used Galen's bad intel to demand huge budget increases for the military. This misinformation helped fuel the whole missile gap myth later on. It basically kick-started the arms race. We adopted Galen's paranoid worldview.
So if I'm getting this right, American taxpayers spent billions. We lived through decades of nuclear anxiety, partly because a Nazi general needed to justify his paycheck.
That is the argument. It's classic confirmation bias. The Americans wanted to believe the Soviets were this massive threat, and Galen was happy to give them the proof, even if he had to make it up.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to the mechanism of recruitment. You mentioned whitewashing files, but Simpson talks about a specific system, TRIO-CAS.
Yes, the Central Registry of War Crimes and Security Suspects. Terrible acronym, powerful tool.
It sounds like a database for catching bad guys.
And that's what it was designed for. It was the master list for hunting war criminals. But in the hands of U.S. intelligence, it got flipped. It became a recruitment catalog.
So instead of, we found you, you're under arrest, it became, we found you and we have leverage over you.
Exactly. We know what you did. We can hang you for it, or you can work for us. Protection was the currency. Interrogation centers like Camp King became recruitment hubs. If you were useful, you vanished from the wanted list and showed up on the payroll.
Now, to be fair, Simpson does point out the Soviets were also playing this game.
And that's an important complexity. They weren't innocent victims here. They also refused to cooperate with a lot of war crimes investigations because they were hiding their own atrocities.
Like the Caton Forest massacre.
Right, where they executed thousands of Polish officers. Or the mass deportations. Both sides were playing a dirty game, hiding their own crimes while using the enemy's criminals.
It's just a complete mess of moral compromise.
It is. And the big picture, the summary of Blowback, is that the U.S. didn't just utilize these men like tools. You can't hire a Nazi intelligence network and expect it to just be a neutral machine. By recruiting them, we imported their worldview.
That's the ultimate blowback.
Yes. It wasn't just losing the moral high ground. It's that we damaged our own foreign policy. We misunderstood the Cold War because we were looking at it through Nazi lenses. We let men who specialized in ideological fanaticism shape our understanding of our new enemy.
It makes you wonder how different the last, 50, 60 years would have been if we had relied on our own analysis.
That is the question. And here's a final thought for you to think about. If the very foundation of our Cold War intelligence, the bedrock of our modern security state, was built by men whose expertise came from death camps and torture chambers, how much of our official history is actually their story, not ours? How much of our fear was manufactured by the very enemies we thought we had defeated?
That is a chilling thought to end on. It definitely makes you want to look a little closer at the footnotes next time you pick up a history book.
Absolutely. Always question the source.
That's it for this deep dive into Blowback. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.